GitHub has a number of security offerings, all of which are free to open source maintainers, so you can use them at no cost on your public repositories. Let's take a look at a few of these. If you've been working on code in a public GitHub repository, you may have already noticed a pull request come in from someone called Dependabot. That's GitHub's tool for checking that your dependencies are vulnerability-free and up to date. This is a section called Code Scanning. If you don't see this section, you're probably working in a private repository. But if you do have it, I recommend clicking the Setup button next to CodeQL Analysis. This will make it possible for GitHub to look for pattern-based vulnerabilities in our code. You might have noticed already, right under that button to turn on CodeQL, there's another setting called Copilot Autofix. GitHub will use the Copilot engine behind the scenes for you, automatically suggesting a fix for that problem. Then all you have to do is accept to fix the PR, and no need to run GitHub Copilot manually. Secret scanning makes it possible for GitHub to warn you about exposed secrets, like passwords or security tokens. You never want these to be directly embedded in your code, so secret scanning lets you know if it finds any and tells you where to remove them. And with push protection turned on, it'll help proactively block any new secrets from being committed into your GitHub codebase.
Quack, quack, quack. Welcome to Rubber Duck Thursdays. It's going to be a weekly stream where we write code, talk about stuff, and we got ducks. I also see this question, what is this about? This is about open source. Our open source community showing how we code things, how we use GitHub to build things at GitHub. I purposely want it to be more guided by what you all want to hear. Anyway, you wanna do some coding?
Have you tried GitHub's new MCP server? MCP is an open protocol that enables AI models to securely connect to tools and data in the GitHub ecosystem. This is GitHub's official open source MCP server. It's like giving your AI assistant superpowers, all from inside VS Code. Let's take a look at what you can do with GitHub's MCP server. You can automate GitHub workflows and processes like triggering actions and managing issues right from chat. You can extract and analyze GitHub repository data using tools like code scanning and repo metadata to generate insights instantly. You can even build your own AI-powered tools to interact with GitHub, creating custom extensions to connect with GitHub APIs and integrate right into your developer workflows. Setting it up is incredibly simple. Let me walk you through it. For VS Code, first, make sure you have the latest version of VS Code installed, then head to gh.io/MCP. That's going to take you to the GitHub MCP server repo page. This repo contains all the code and documentation for the server. Don't forget to leave a star. You can scroll down to the README and see this one-click option here, just to install for VS Code or VS Code Insiders. We'll select VS Code, and that's going to automatically open our editor. You can see I'm able to look at the configurations, and here's where I'm going to update the secret. Also, I need to make sure that I have agent mode enabled. Once that's done, you can interact directly in the GitHub Copilot chat box by selecting agent mode. This is going to allow Copilot to access and use the GitHub MCP server tools. Now you're ready to interact through natural language. You can ask things like run get me, which is going to show you a brief overview of the authenticated user. You can even give a task. I wanted to create a new repo called MCP-tips and even add the content that's gonna go into the README. So once I specify what I want in it, the MCP server goes and does the work for me. With GitHub's MCP server, you're enabling a new class of AI-powered tooling, whether for automated workflows or using insights from repos. It's all open source, developer first, and ready to extend. It works seamlessly with VS Code agent mode, plus you can use it with any tool that supports the Model Context Protocol. Try it out, start the repo, and let me know what you're building.
GitHub Universe, the World's Fair of Software Development, is officially in preparation mode for our event on October 28th and 29th. The call for speakers is now open through May 2nd. And so if you got insights on AI, developer experience, or security, now's your chance to shine. This event promises to be a mix of innovation, inspiration, and maybe a little bit too much coffee. Whether you're a speaker or an attendee, it's bound to be a developer dreamland, and I know I've really loved attending every single year, so we hope to see you there.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Open Source Friday, the show where we talk to maintainers about the apps that they're maintaining. So I'm super excited for this episode. I know I say that every week, but every week I am super excited. Today we're talking to the core maintainer of Typewind. Typewind, and Typewind is an amazing project that brings the full power of Tailwind CSS into your TypeScript workflow safely and seamlessly. Very curious to learn more about this project, how it was built, the idea behind it, how it's maintained, how he does so much, because he is a young guy. Like, he's a very young engineer. So I'm curious to learn and to share his story with you all. So we're just going to get right into it. So welcome to the stream.
Hey everyone, hey Kadesha, thanks for having me.
Of
So
course.
excited to be here.
Yeah, welcome. So we are so excited to have you on the stream. I know we've been trying to get you on for a little bit, so I'm happy that our schedules aligned and you're here. And happy Maintainer Month. May is Maintainer Month. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah, so May is Maintainer Month, and we actually have a lot of events going on throughout the month. So check out the Maintainer Month website to learn more. So today we're talking to Mokshit about Typewind. I keep saying TypeScript, but Typewind. So kind of tell me, Mokshit, tell me about yourself. How did you get into open source? And yeah, what is your story?
Hi, I'm Mokshit. I'm an 18-year-old from Delhi, India. So I started with development back in like 8th grade, where I was just like playing around with web development, HTML, CSS, just like building my own website, seeing how the web works. And then in 9th grade, I had a lot of time because my school started becoming online because of like lockdown, COVID, all that. And I just had like all this time. So I spent all of it just like learning all these languages. I started with JavaScript, then went into Rust. And as I was using this, like I realized that most of the code that I was writing was just like built on top of these libraries that I was just installing mindlessly. But someone had built them. And like I wanted to explore how these work. Like, okay, I'm using Node.js to run it, but how does something that runs in the browser also just happens to run on the server? Like, how does that happen? And so, like, obviously, like, just like everyone, when I wanted to build something, I just opted to use an open source library. But then there was a point where I just couldn't find something for it. And so I built my very own library for that. That was back in 10th grade. And I built this, there's this library called React Table, which used to be called React Table. Now it's called Tanstack Table. So back then, it just had the support for React. But I was trying out this new framework called Solid.js, which it didn't have an integration for, and there just wasn't any like data grid management library for Solid. So I figured it would be kind of cool if Solid also had like an integration for this. And so that was the first time I like dived into the code base of an open source project, like from the start, learned how it works, and just like shipped my first pull request. Like, hi, this is just me adding this feature to this library, which adds support for like this entire ecosystem of Solid.js. And I started using this. To my surprise, a lot more people started using it. I think today it gets like 20,000 installs every week or something. And then over the next few months, I did that a lot for Tanstack Table. I ended up becoming like one of our core maintainers. Today it's used at like Fortune 500 companies, a lot more. And then alongside, like as I was getting into this, a lot like a major point of Tanstack Table is that managing tables while keeping them performant is hard because there's so much data. There's like hundreds of thousands of lines of data. How do you render that performantly? So I just got very excited into like a performant web, something that's like not jank to use, just works on my mobile phone, but also like on my desktop. And this was also like around the time when CSS and JS was like being hyped a lot. Everyone was using it, but everyone felt the pain of it. Like you open a website, you don't see anything but like a white screen for like 1 second, and then stuff loads in. But if you're like on a slow phone or like a slow network connection, that might be 5 seconds of nothingness. That was around when I started exploring CSS and JS at compile time. Like the fastest way to run a code is to just not run the code. What if the user never runs the code? What if like the developer's machine runs the code and gets the result, and then the user just gets the result, which is the CSS file? So that's basically how Typewind got built, and how another of my projects, like open source projects called Macron, got built. like compile time optimization of JS libraries such that the JS is actually never shown. I think you're actually muted. I can't quite hear you.
Wow, that's amazing. It always happens to me. Somehow I'm muted. That's amazing. And what an incredible story. And so you mentioned that you're 18 years old. And so are you in school? Like, how are you managing building open source
I graduated
tools?
school last March. So
You graduated
yeah,
from high school or college?
yeah, from high school in last year March.
And now you're
So right
working as a
now,
professional software engineer.
yeah, I've been
Wild.
working at Cognition since May of last year. I joined in May last
Wild.
year. So I was going to go to
Wild.
college, but I ended up taking a gap year, and
Mhm.
then I just kept working.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So like tell me, how do you manage building all these tools used by developers around the world and at Fortune 500 company? Like how are you managing your time and like being like young?
In high school, I think that like the answer was for that was just sleepless nights, like just a really bad sleep schedule combined with um, just eyes that hurt a lot and
Mhm.
random headaches. So like my in high school, my schedule was like I used to have school from like morning till like afternoon 2 p.m. or something. I would
Mhm.
take like a break and then just like tinker around with libraries, like just build projects. Like I think the way I started with open source was just I used to build stuff. Like I used to participate in hackathons a lot. And then
Mhm.
when I'm participating in this, I just realized I want to build this feature. It would be cool if something to do this existed. If it doesn't, then I make my own. And then yeah. So like I didn't really plan that I'm going to make this project. If I feel like a pain point, I just build something to resolve it. And then once I just like decided, oh, maybe like other people would find it helpful, so I should share it. Uh, so yeah, like I used to spend roughly like when I built Typewind, it's actually pretty funny. The way it started was with this tweet, like this random tweet. This is the maintainer of Zord, like another really
Oh,
big
let me
jest
share your
thingy.
screen. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was this really random tweet. This is Mark Dalglish. He's the creator of CSS modules. So like people were just discussing on Twitter, it would be like cool if something like this existed, like a TypeScript API that doesn't
Mm.
actually like add API, it does like static analysis. And then he shared like a proposal for an API. I found it really interesting, so I just quote tweeted it the same day. Looks like I found something to work on this week. This was Jan 17th, and by like Jan 19th, I had some semi-working demo where you could
Oh
like
my
write code like this.
goodness.
It compiled to strings, and then like Jan 24th, I published the library, and that like took off. So yeah, like I just thought this would be cool to make. I built it, and then people started using it.
That's wild.
Um,
I mean, the speed at which you did that is crazy. From seeing the tweet to say, "Oh, I'm gonna do this," to actually doing it and then shipping it for all to
yeah, so like
use.
it's like when I did stuff like this, it would be like 7, 8 hours a day just like hacking on my computer.
Oh
And
my
other times, like
goodness.
when I'm just casually maintaining libraries, it would be like answering questions, figuring out bugs. That would be
Mhm.
like an hour a day, usually less than that. So it depends on that.
Got you, got you. That's yeah, the speed at which you did that is incredible because I know a lot of times, we see stuff and like we'll bookmark it to say, "Oh, I'm gonna work on that later," and later never comes. But you're
Yeah,
like, "Oh, I'm
never.
gonna do it," and you did it, and you reap the rewards because I think the project became very popular like very quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Like
So like,
it got sponsored by Vercel as well over time because like
mhm,
I had hosted my documentation website on Vercel, and I think I hit the limit of the free plan in like 12 hours.
mhm.
So they just had to sponsor it because it was like an open source project. Yeah, that was like the crazy
Wild,
time. This was roughly 2 years back. Yeah,
wild.
and I've been like
So
working on this off and on
So
since.
tell us about or like show us Typewind. Let's see it in action. How
Yeah,
can we get started using it and how does it work actually?
let's do it. So I'll just move to my creator. Essentially, like, I'm sure everyone here has used Tailwind. With Tailwind, like if you're writing like some code, you'd like have a dev, which would have like a class of I don't know, like BG Black or something. Uh, but the main like Tailwind is great to use because like it's very modular. You can just add classes. You can see what
Hmm.
each class does without like jumping into a separate file. but it has an issue. What if there's a typo? What if it's like this? There's really no way to figure out why it's
Oh
not
wow.
working without like jumping into the source code. And like, I would just like, if it's like in the middle of a 1,000-line file, I would just be confused searching for it. So one way to fix this is to like build an extension, which like a VS Code extension, something like that. But then you have to like manage HTML files, TypeScript files, JavaScript files. Anyway, you've written like Tailwind. And another issue with that is that it only works in VS Code. What if I'm using like Vim or Emacs? That solution doesn't work. The good thing is we already have a solution for that, like type safety, languages that are type safe, one of which happens to be TypeScript, and everyone uses TypeScript. So I just thought like it would be cool if it could just like work off of TypeScript's type checker. And that's essentially what Typewind does. So if I just remove this entire thing and like write it again, with Typewind, we essentially have this like TW import, which you hook off of for everything. So you just do TW dot, and then you see you have all these classes. These are basically every Tailwind class combination that could exist. So I can just do BG, black. I can see the class it would generate right here. And if I make a typo, you see I get a red squiggly. This code won't compile. Like this would just not compile. It would show me the error in the console. And if I hover over it, you can see this class does not exist. Did you mean this?
Nice.
So that's the main, like just like type safety in general. Like you catch errors a lot sooner, you make typos less, and you just don't ship like broken code. Yeah, and then it adds a lot of like good to have features. So in Tailwind, if you're like adding hover classes, you do like hover text white and then like hover BG red, and you have to just like repeat this hover thing a lot. It gets hard to manage, especially when you're like hover placeholder something. The good point is because we have TypeScript, an entire functional language, we have functions. So we can just do hover as a function and chain everything inside of this. So you have this like very nice grouping of classes with their modifiers. So what this means is that this container would have a black background. On hover, it would become red, and the text would become white. And now if I shift to the browser and show you guys this code, it's pretty basic, black background, I hover, it becomes white. The best part is if you see the HTML for it,
Can you
you
zoom
see
in
this
a
is
little?
just a string file. Yeah. Yeah. If you see the HTML, this is just a string.
Ah.
And if you also go to the sources tab and look for the JS of it, let's search for hello. And this should open up here. Let me try that. Yeah. Now it's open. Yeah, you can see the class in the JS source code is also just a string. Like the function call, this entire thing just vanishes at bedtime. It's as if this import doesn't even exist. So there already are like some solutions that like did this JS thing. Like there is a library called twin.macro where you could do something very similar. Like you could call Tailwind as a function. But the downside was that they ship an entire runtime of like 20 kilobytes, 30 kilobytes. And then that's like the slow website problem. So this basically combines the two with static analysis. So essentially what you have is you have like when you compile your JS code, there's a source code analysis that is happening. This is a function. This is a return statement. This is a JSX element. This is a class name attribute. All of these are happening. We just hook onto them and transform this to a string.
That's incredible because that was going to be my next question, you know, like what performance impact or effect does Typewind have compared to plain Tailwind? But it seems like it's not affecting anything. Essentially,
Exactly. Like it's basically as if you're writing Tailwind, but with the development experience improvement.
right.
Yeah, like not downgrading user experience at all.
Incredible. And so we just clone the repo and add it or like install the package and it's going to be a dev dependency and that's it.
Yeah, like you just add this to, you just add a Babel plugin to your
Hmm.
plugins, and that's all. Then you can just import it and use it. That's
Incredible.
all. Just a one-line change.
Incredible.
Just
That's the show, y'all. Incredible. Go use Typewind.
so yeah,
Wow. And
like
so like,
even my very first demo that like I just made in like 12 hours.
yeah.
You see, this was like less than 20 lines of code. But what it did was just hook onto this TW modifier, convert that to strings. Like even that worked. And now
Yeah.
this is just like a more sophisticated version of that. That does a lot.
Incredible. Incredible. So I'm curious, what was the most or like what was the biggest technical challenge you faced when you were building Typewind?
I think the biggest technical challenge would have been, um, I think the main one is that you have to like figure out. So basically, a big part of Tailwind's extension that people use it for is that you can just hover over classes and see the definition. Like if I don't know what BG Fed 400 does, I can just hover on top of it, and I'll be able to see with Tailwind's extension that this is the class name it adds. With TypeScript, you kind of miss on that, and the hard part is how do you generate all these combinations? Like I can at any point do a dot and see all these, but if you worked in JS, like in JS you have objects like which only have like one level of nesting. You can do t.a, but after that you just like reach this limit of string properties. How do you do like recursive calling like this such that
Mm-hmm.
it's infinitely chainable? And also you get like these very nice hoverable properties. Again,
Mm-hmm.
without installing an extension, the entire point is TypeScript, and TypeScript's server is supposed to be everything that is required. It's supposed to be a one-line change. So I actually had a very interesting solution to that. In our code base, we have this CLI that if you see, it just essentially what it does is we generate TypeScript types on the fly. Like we look at the user's Tailwind configuration, we see all the colors they have, and we create this like virtual TypeScript file on the fly that's custom made to their Tailwind configuration. So if I were to add like a Tailwind plugin, even types for that would be generated. And the way that happens is that I can just jump to definition. You can see we add this CSS block comments. Like all of these properties just have this CSS brackets. And VS Code understands this that, okay, if you hover on this, you should see this.
Right.
So this is like this entire, like, I don't know, like 188,000 line TypeScript file that's generated on the fly for custom made for the user with every possibility that can happen.
Wild.
And just also figuring out the API for this. So like in Tailwind, you can do text 16 pixel for like a custom value. Like you can add any value here. How would that work in TypeScript? Because how do you like do these modifiers while keeping the API the same? So we figured out a very clean solution to that. You just do text underscore and you access it. Like we're just abusing JS's API and building like this very sophisticated analysis over it. This makes zero sense from a JS point of view. You're accessing a 16 pixel property on text underscore. What does that mean?
Right.
But essentially the static compiler can figure out that this was accessed on a token that's like supposed to be for custom values. So the syntax is very similar, but honestly, we're just abusing JS and it works.
Right. That's amazing. I mean, it's like you're taking the tools that already exist and you're just building on top of it, for the type checking in Tailwind, essentially.
Yeah. And we also ended up building out like a runtime version of it, which honestly I feel is super cool. JS has this thing called proxies. I'm not sure if you're aware of them, but essentially with proxies, what you can do is that, as I mentioned, like in JS, if there's an object, like let's say there's an object A that has a property C, you can do A.B and that exists. But you can't access any other property that's just undefined. What proxies let you do is that you can essentially generate objects on the fly. So I can create a proxy, which we can just pass an empty object to, and you can intercept every property access. So I can say when anything is accessed on proxy, just return P, which means this is this object, which we pass empty so we can ignore that. P is whatever value was accessed, just return the value. So now, all of a sudden, all of these properties exist, and anything you access exists, because proxy isn't an object, it's like generated on the fly. You're making it seem like all of these keys existed, even though none of them did. And then we can just use proxies to make this like recursive object that does everything and yet is like invisible.
Nice.
So like proxies are really helpful because you can abuse like JS's API to make it seem like everything exists in an object.
Right. That's really smart. That's a really smart approach. So how did you get into open source? That's a question from the audience.
I got into open source through like I just used to be very active on Twitter. And Tanner Linsley, who is the creator of React Table, React Query, all these great libraries, he just posted like a bounty, like it would be cool if someone created a solid just adapter for this library. And I also like had felt the need for it. And so that was just like the thing that motivated me that, okay, this seems cool. Maybe I should figure it out. And yeah, that was my first exploration into open source.
Wow,
I spent like a
that's
few days just
incredible.
reading the code base, and then I just like made something work. Yeah, a lot of back and forth on that pull request, but it got merged.
Incredible. And
It was like a $500 bounty or something like
Nice.
that, which back in 10th grade seemed like a lot. So I was like,
I
okay,
mean, yeah,
makes sense to like spend 5 sleepless nights on it to get it to work.
that's awesome. I mean, you hack around and you get $500. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And just for like a simple pull request, hell yeah.
It's like I can do that in my sleep.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, that's
do you
enough
have
motivation to get into it.
and do you have any plans to work towards W3 standard submission?
I think Typewind is too specific to be a standard. Like, because this is possible in the user land space, it being a standard doesn't really make sense. Because this already works. Like, I feel like standards, yeah, that would just make competition harder to compete. So yeah, this probably shouldn't be standard.
Gotcha. And how do you keep up with Tailwind's rapid updates to make sure that Typewind stays in sync? Like, does it affect the project at all?
It actually doesn't. That's the main point of it. Like, because of the type of integration that we built with Tailwind, most of the updates just work.
Yeah.
All of the plugins just work because we use the same APIs that Tailwind uses internally. Like we, most of our code just imports stuff from Tailwind. Like, let me see. So there's this utils file where we literally import Tailwind's resolve config and create context functions. So Tailwind would keep that up to date. And as long as that happens, our library would be up to date.
Wild.
So this should just work. I guess every major version, I basically like verify that it works. But in minor versions, upgrades, none of this should break. So it should just work.
Yeah. That's incredible, you know? And so I know you have other open source projects. So how do you find these ideas to build projects and ship them?
Most of them just happen to be like a problem that I face.
Mm-hmm.
And I experiment somewhat with it. And I feel like if I find a solution, then I just share it. Another of my open source projects is this thing called Macron, which is also like compile time CSS in JS. But instead of being like localized to Tailwind, this is basically styled components, but compile time.
Interesting.
So yeah, I actually have a very cool visualization here of how it works. So this just looks like a normal styled component that you would write in like other libraries. But this transforms into a static JS file. And how it happens is that the compiler plugin that I have, it looks for all these styled or recipe function calls. It locates them. It finds all the identifiers that you've referenced inside of, like, this is a variable that's declared and you've used it. So it finds it. It extracts it into a separate file. This is the static extraction part. Like, this was your original code. This is your new code, basically. And this is a new file. All in memory, none of them is like being written to your system. And because this is like a new file, we can just run it in like Node.js VM or something like that. So the final result is this CSS file completely extracted and just a JS object of variables to CSS variables. That's all. So this went from like a 20 to 30 kilobyte file down to like less than a kilobyte, all at compile time, without like you having to think of anything.
Incredible. And
Like you just write code as if it's JS, but it's no longer JS.
incredible. How did you build that?
I honestly explored a lot. So there were like some similar libraries that existed. Like back then, there was this library called Linearia and Vanilla Extract. These two libraries exist. But the main issue with them was they didn't do the separation part. You already had to write your files in a different, like styles in a different file, and then it would just run them. But I just wanted that like I should be able to write it in my own file so that everything is co-located. And that's when I like built this transformer part. And this also uses Babel. I would recommend trying this tool called AST Explorer, which is great for like figuring out how Babel works. Essentially, you can see like this is just some JS code, but over here, this is how like all these libraries see it. There's a body which has a variable declaration, and then that declaration has like an array expression. And all of these are things that you can modify. Like all of these are things that the program can hook onto. Like, okay, I want to transform, like for whatever reason, I want to transform every array into an object. I don't know why I would want to do that, but maybe I want to do that. So I would just write a plugin that looks for array expressions and just turns them into objects. I would like write something that looks for an if condition and turns all the if conditions to be true, like truly, like just make them work always for whatever reason. But like all of these use cases don't make sense. But like when you see these like compile time use cases, or like just developer experience enhancements, they make a lot of sense. Yeah, like right here you can see this is a Babel plugin, and all it does is that it reverses every identifier. So over here it was text, here it becomes print, here it was print text. It just got reversed. And it's like a 2-line code. If you just look for identifier, you change the name to be reversed. And of course, this doesn't make sense, but like you can build like really cool tools on top of this.
Awesome. And
This is
what's
a
the
great
link?
experience.
What's the link to this
ASP
site? I
Explorer
can't
dot
see
net.
it.
Let me share that.
Yeah, pop it in the chat. Thanks. And just pop it up here. Awesome. So we have a question about vibe coding. So how do you feel about vibe coding and the would-be effect to startups and junior engineers?
I have mixed opinions on this, especially as like someone who works at like a startup that is like code generation. There's like I feel like vibe coding makes sense for people who are already technical, but for like completely non-technical folks, there are just way too many like ways to get stuck into it, especially from like security point of view. That like I feel like the net positive vibe coding in general is net positive, but like mindlessly vibe coding solutions just leads to way too many problems. Like you're storing sensitive user information, you might leak it. You might like not hash passwords properly. But in general, like as someone who's technical, if you're like reviewing every part of it, it's a major speed up. Because okay, like these are very novel creations. Sure, like Cursor, Devin, those can't vibe code it. But if I'm just building a UI that's like a sign-up form, I don't want to like think about how I should center a div or like how I should like what colors I should pick. So there, like it makes a lot of sense.
I agree with your take. You know, I think there are so many the security concerns is what gets me the most, and also people vibe coding without understanding the fundamentals of version control, so they lose all their work. And I'm just
like there have been so many tweets I've seen where people are like, "How do I roll back to a version of Cursor? Use Git. Git exists." But
but the security,
vibe coding can't be used for novel solutions, but like the reality is most people aren't working on novel things. They're working on like novel integration of existing principles. where vibe coding really sits.
Yeah, but I also think it's an opportunity for education, because software development and building applications, it's changing rapidly because of generative AI. So I think it's an
Exactly.
opportunity for us to educate folks on how to vibe code safely and what this means.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing with vibe coding is that another negative is that it sort of makes it harder to innovate specs, specifications, because
Mm,
LLMs are so well trained on this one library that everyone just
mm,
ends up using that library because you can vibe
mm.
code it. So there are concerns there, but I'm pretty sure with web all of the LLMs having web search, that should become less of a concern. But today,
Agreed.
most code bases are in Tailwind because vibe coding with Tailwind is just so much easier. LLMs don't have to modify two files; they can just write the styles. But yeah, that's I feel a minor concern that will be resolved soon.
Yeah, agreed. And if y'all have questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just gonna ask a few more questions and then we can wrap up the episode. I will say Typewind is amazing. I use Tailwind all the time, and yeah, I have that issue where I'm just combing through, or you know what? Now I ask my AI
Yeah,
buddy to be like, hey,
there's this thing
where's
where
the error?
yeah, Tailwind classes for text SMing exist, small text, and large text exists. So you just think text MD also exists, but
Hmm.
it doesn't exist. So many people have text MD on their code base, but
Hmm.
that's just not a class thing that exists. It's text base, and for you can just search for text MD. There are 39,000 results for text MD, and this class name just doesn't exist. But 39,000 lines have been written with this that are just errors essentially, but people don't realize that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So just these things where, especially if say you're using Tailwind and tomorrow Tailwind ships a major release where
Hmm.
they rename 10 APIs to be something else. Now you have to search through your entire code base for things to
Ooh,
replace. But with this, you get TypeScript errors, which is the entire point of TypeScript. So all of this just works. You're using
yeah.
a plugin that makes a major change. You just see it. You modify your base theme to have different variable names. You change that, you just see errors instead of stuff not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Makes
with
sense to
that
me.
migration point of view, it helps a lot.
Excuse me. Makes sense to me. And so I'm curious, what was your first taste of programming, or your first, oh my gosh, I can build stuff moment?
So I had been I started programming as a thing back in sixth grade. Before that, I used to do art a lot, painting, fine arts a
Back
lot.
in sixth grade. Listen,
Yeah.
that wasn't that long
But
ago. Keep going.
yeah, so I used to do art a lot, just a lot of sketching and painting. So I got into programming through this tool called MSW Logo,
Mhm.
which is barely programming, but essentially what it was is that you can write programs you have this one cursor, you just have a pointer, and you can move around it. You can make it. Let me see if I can find something that this is program. Essentially you have a cursor which you can move around, move forward 10 pixels, then
Mhm.
draw a path for 10 pixels, rotate 90 degrees, then draw a path for 10 pixels. You can draw with code essentially. You have
Yeah.
this one pointer, you just move it around and then you draw with it. But the thing is, you can also do loops with it to create these really fractal patterns. Look at this. This is basically with code. This is math, code, and art. So this is how I got started with it, just building these patterns. Yeah, turn right 90 degrees, then move forward 10 pixels, turn right, and just doing that in a loop creates these very cool patterns. This is how I got started with code
Wow.
in general, loops, variables, all that. And then that sort of I did that for a few months, found it really cool, dropped off, and then I saw this my school hosted a web development competition where I wanted to just participate. It was supposed to be for 11th and 12th graders, but I just wanted to try out how does the web work. So I just got started with HTML, CSS, JavaScript back then.
I mean, I can see why you're so, because I noticed when you're speaking about how you build stuff, you're very intricate and detailed in your explanation. And I can see why. It's because you started with this very intricate way of learning how to code, or like interacting with coding languages. Because MSW logo, this seems very like just like detailed. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm explaining
Yeah,
it properly. Hopefully y'all know what I'm saying. But wow, I've never heard of MSW logo. Let me just say that. But
it's
this is
supposed to be like a
incredible.
kid's tool to just like build these patterns,
Yeah.
draw stuff. And yeah, so I just found it really cool, but it got me into like more, I guess, hardcore programming, if you want to say that.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. And someone saying he did this in 6th grade. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think when I was doing some prep for the episode, I read that you've won the Apple Coding Challenge before when you were in
Yeah,
12th grade or
yeah,
something.
I won that in college. Yeah,
What?
that again, that's like a crazy story itself. I didn't know Swift at all. So like for Apple's coding challenge, the thing is essentially that you're supposed to build an iOS or an iPad app that's like very interactive. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
very creative idea, and they can judge it like within 3 minutes. Like they would spend only 3 minutes on each project. It goes on like usually from Feb to May. I got to know about it in mid-April, like 2 weeks before submission. I didn't know anything about Swift at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, okay, let's try this. We have 2 weeks. So 2 weeks of sleepless nights, learning all about Swift. And I built this app, which was essentially augmented reality visualization of text compression. Like, all of us know that like every character takes like 8 bytes, and all of it is like stored that way. But most computers store it in like less data. That's why earlier on, like programs used to take a lot more space. Now they take less.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because text can be compressed with these like very cool algorithms. The very common one is Huffman coding. Essentially, like if you have a sentence that has 5 W's, you can make W be the number one character essentially, and you can like sort them by frequency. And then the very first character takes just 1 byte instead of like 8 bytes, because you can just like map the frequency. Like you can create a frequency to you. And it's like hard to explain with words. That's the entire problem. Like I tried to learn it, I couldn't learn it because how do you explain it in words? So I built
Mm-hmm.
this like augmented reality tree visualization where you can just write any text, and it's an like, educational app where it renders it in like augmented reality tree where you can interact with each node. You can see what it represents, how it constructs back into the word, how it got like deconstructed. Yeah,
Wow.
built that over 2 weeks. Really cool.
Engineering prodigy stuff, folks. um, that's incredible. That's incredible. I can't wait
I might be able
to.
to find it. Let me see.
Yeah.
Is it on GitHub? It is on GitHub. I don't have screenshots of it though. But yeah, it's basically
Mhm.
an educational app where like you can play around with text compression.
That's pretty cool. So where can the folks find you online?
I'm active on Twitter. Yeah, mostly just on Twitter, honestly. Like I work on projects on GitHub, but most of them are like shared on Twitter itself. So
Mhm.
I'm Mokshit06 on Twitter, and I post quite a bit there.
Nice. And also, you should check out his portfolio site. It's incredible. It's an origami, and as you're
Yeah, I
scrolling,
actually do origami a lot. I started with origami also very early on, and
mm-hmm,
that again, like art, CS, I just like both a lot. Um, I did some like origami has an entire mathematical computational side to it, which like basically how that's how this website works. Like you see how
mm-hmm.
this is folded, all of this code is in JavaScript. Like we
Nice.
are mimicking physics of paper folding such that you can like fold it into this. And a fun add-on is that this cat follows your mouse, your cursor,
Yes, I
because it's a
noticed that
cat.
too.
Yeah.
Very fun, very incredible. Definitely check out Typewind, integrate it into your Tailwind CSS project because it will just make, type checking a lot easier for your CSS. Oh, we did have a question. Can Typewind be used outside of React? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it can. It can be used in any JS setup. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, cool, cool. I read that he worked with an MIT professor on origami. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah. So I basically did like some origami research with an MIT professor.
Incredible.
on like algorithms that can make origami rendering more efficient. Again, like performance. I just was like very passionate about making things performant, like as performant as they can be. Like, why is this taking 3 seconds? This should take like 30 milliseconds. So just kidding about that.
That's
So
awesome.
you like end up inventing a new algorithm which just makes all the rendering, which is like actually used on our website. That's why like you can just scroll through this really quickly. Yeah.
Got you. And is your website open source?
My website is not open source, I think, but I wouldn't mind
That's
making it
fine.
open source. Yeah, I
It
can make
doesn't
it
have
open
to be.
source.
But yeah, definitely check him out online. Follow him on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. You know, it feels
Yeah, I call it
strange to
Twitter.
say.
I don't
Yeah.
call it X.
Find him on Twitter to follow his journey, and definitely check out Typewind to type check your Tailwind CSS. And I think we're gonna wrap up, right? I think that was a pretty great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us. It may be open source, but is it also free software? Yes, Typewind is a free open source software that you can use in your project anytime. And look at that, Mokshit is so cool. Exactly. This was a really fun chat. Thank you for coming
Same
on.
here.
Anything else you want to say to the folks before we wrap up?
No, I had a great time. Honestly, like, if people will like want to get into open source, I still think like the best way to get into open source is to not think about getting into open source. It's like
Ooh.
just building, like just working on things that you are personally passionate about. Like if you're a web developer, just make websites, and you will find like things that are taking you so much time than they like more time than they should. Try to like optimize it for your use case, and then just share it because like there'll be other people who are like also who would also find it just helpful. Like even if it's like 10 people, you're helping 10 people, so just like share it. Yeah.
Agreed. If you want to get into open source, don't think about it, just get into open source. I love
Yeah,
that.
because like there's really no like open source just requires so much effort. Like I can't be motivated to read like 100,000 line code base to make like a pull request on it just because like I want to get into open source. But if I like want to fix this problem that I faced, then I might be motivated to do that. And yeah, like there's really no good starting point in open source. Like there are like so many repositories. Which one do I contribute to? But if you know like what you're trying to fix, then you know what to contribute to because you've like single it out.
Yeah. I love that approach, and I completely agree. So get into open source, people. Stop thinking about it. Just do it. And Maintainer Month is the perfect time to do it. So happy Maintainer Month. Thanks for coming on, Mokshit. Thank you
Thanks so
all
much
for
for having me.
joining us. Yeah, of course. This was fun. And I will see you next week. See you online, folks. Bye.
So excited. Thanks everyone. Thanks. Guys.